In the eerie depths of the night, as the city slumbered, I found myself trapped within the desolate confines of the decaying Blackwood Sanatorium. As a security guard on the graveyard shift, I was tasked with safeguarding the crumbling establishment from the horrors that lurked within its cursed walls. The air was thick with a suffocating mustiness, the scent of decay permeating every creaky corridor. Shadows danced ominously, casting grotesque figures on the dilapidated walls. The silence was broken only by the occasional creak of a loose floorboard or the distant wail of a phantom siren. As the night wore on, the silence became unbearable. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with dread. Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets, every sound a harbinger of impending doom. Suddenly, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I froze, my eyes scanning the darkness. Something was moving in the shadows, a faint rustling that sent a jolt of terror through my veins. Slowly, I approached the source of the noise, my flashlight trembling in my hand. As I rounded a corner, I gasped in horror. A grotesque figure emerged from the gloom, its emaciated body clad in a tattered hospital gown. Its eyes glowed with an unholy fire, and its twisted mouth was frozen in a malevolent grin. The creature lunged at me, its claws extended. I screamed and stumbled backward, my flashlight falling to the floor. Darkness enveloped me, and I felt a sharp pain in my leg. I collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. As the creature closed in, its fetid breath on my face, I realized my fate was sealed. In the depths of my despair, I whispered a desperate prayer, hoping for salvation that would never come. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light. The creature recoiled, its claws scraping against the floor. I looked up to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its eyes piercing the darkness. "Begone, foul creature," the figure commanded. With a deafening roar, the creature vanished into thin air. I lay there trembling, my body aching. The shadowy figure approached me, its footsteps echoing through the desolate corridor. "Are you all right?" a deep voice asked. I nodded weakly, unable to speak. The figure helped me to my feet and led me out of the sanatorium. As we walked through the moonlit grounds, I couldn't help but wonder who my savior was and what had transpired within those cursed walls. The following morning, I returned to Blackwood to investigate the previous night's events. The sanatorium was empty, the creature gone without a trace. As I searched the building, I stumbled upon a hidden room filled with ancient medical equipment and a dusty journal. In the journal, I discovered the horrifying truth. Blackwood Sanatorium had once been a psychiatric hospital, where unspeakable experiments were conducted on the inmates. The creature I had encountered was one of the victims, a patient who had been subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment. Haunted by the horrors I had witnessed, I left Blackwood Sanatorium for good. But the memory of that night would forever remain etched in my mind, a chilling testament to the darkness that lurks within the shadows. In the eerie silence of the night shift, I found myself alone in the sprawling, desolate hospital corridors. As a security guard, I was tasked with patrolling the empty wards and ensuring the safety of the patients and staff. It was a job that was usually uneventful, but on this particular night, an unsettling feeling crept into the air. As I rounded a corner, the flickering lights cast long, menacing shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. The air grew heavy with an oppressive atmosphere, and a strange, inexplicable sound filled the corridor. It was a faint whisper, almost like a distant moan, that echoed through the emptiness. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously approached the source of the sound. I peered into a darkened room, its door slightly ajar. A cold breeze swept through the doorway, sending shivers down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to turn and run. But curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped inside. The room was pitch black, save for a faint glow emanating from a corner. As I drew closer, I realized it was coming from a single candle flickering on a bedside table. Beside the table lay a bed, its sheets rumpled and stained with what looked like blood. A figure stirred beneath the covers, and I let out a gasp of surprise. It was a young woman, her face pale and contorted in agony. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I rushed to her side, but as I reached out to touch her, her body convulsed violently. Her eyes snapped open, revealing blood-red pupils that stared unseeingly past me. A guttural growl escaped her lips, and her teeth bared in a terrifying snarl. In that instant, I realized that something was terribly wrong. This was no ordinary patient. This was something unnatural. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the room. But as I turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for the light switch, but it was useless. The power had gone out. Trapped in the darkness, I could hear the creature moving around the room. Its heavy footsteps echoed through the silence, growing louder with each passing moment. I could feel its cold breath on my neck, and its foul stench filled my nostrils. Fear consumed me as I frantically searched for a way out. I banged on the door, but it refused to budge. I tried to smash the window, but the glass was too thick. I was trapped, and the creature was closing in. With a deafening roar, the creature lunged at me from the shadows. Its sharp claws raked across my skin, tearing through flesh and muscle. I screamed in agony as it sank its teeth into my shoulder, its bloodlust insatiable. As darkness enveloped me, I could hear the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. The creature's laughter echoed through the room, a cruel and mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. In the end, I died alone in that cursed room, my body torn to shreds. And as my life ebbed away, I knew that the horror I had witnessed that night would forever haunt the corridors of the hospital, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within its walls. In the eerie silence of the night, I embarked on my solitary shift as a security guard at the dilapidated old hospital. Its crumbling facade and overgrown grounds cast an ominous shadow, hinting at the sinister secrets it held within. As the clock ticked past midnight, a strange stillness settled over the hospital. The usual creaks and groans of the aged building seemed to vanish, replaced by an oppressive silence that made my skin crawl. The air grew thick and heavy, suffocating me with an unseen presence. Suddenly, a faint sound broke the monotony. From the depths of the abandoned maternity ward, I heard a faint whimpering. Curiosity overcame my fear, and I cautiously approached the source of the noise. As I peered through the broken window, I saw a spectral figure hovering over an old, empty crib. Its translucent body flickered in the moonlight, casting an ethereal glow on the room. The figure seemed to be cradling something invisible, rocking it back and forth with tender care. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized that the figure was a ghost. The ghost of a mother who had lost her child in this very hospital. Her mournful cries echoed through the empty hallways, sending chills down to my bones. Desperate to escape the spectral presence, I turned to flee, but my feet felt heavy and unyielding. It was as if an invisible force held me captive. The ghostly mother's cries grew louder, more desperate, as she seemed to sense my presence. Terror surged through me as the figure slowly turned its head towards me. Its eyes, once filled with sorrow, now burned with an unholy fire. Its mouth twisted into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. In that moment, I knew that I was doomed. The ghostly mother lunged at me, her ethereal claws reaching out to tear me apart. I screamed in agony as her spectral form tore through my flesh, leaving behind gaping wounds that bled an unnatural black liquid. As darkness enveloped me, I heard a final, haunting whisper from the ghostly mother. "You will never leave this hospital," she hissed. "You will join us here, forever trapped in this cursed place." And with that, my consciousness faded into the abyss, leaving only my shattered body as a grim reminder of the horrors that lurked within the abandoned hospital. Years later, the hospital remains abandoned, its crumbling walls a testament to the horrors that transpired within. Visitors to the site often report hearing faint cries and whispers in the night, as if the ghosts of the past still linger, seeking vengeance on those who dare to trespass. And so, the legend of the haunted hospital lives on, a chilling tale that warns of the dangers that lurk in the shadows, waiting for the unwary to stumble into their eternal embrace.